I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the
to the
republic
for which
it
it
stands, one
one
nation, under
in
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Has the roll been taken?
It has, and all are present except for Commissioner Lalone.
Okay. Tonight we have a presentation by MMDC, and we also have a census update. And Jim McBride is here with us tonight. And Jim, I'll let you start us off tonight.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Sure
Yes.
can.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to mention, like everybody else in this pandemic, we've had to learn how to work differently than we normally do. Now, we do have 14 business calls more in the traditional sense so far this year. We'll be giving you a breakdown of that at our next at the next presentation. Those were mostly done in the first quarter. Bill Merdeza was involved with a lot of those. But anyway, we've had hundreds of calls with businesses in the Mount Pleasant area in Isabella County since that time, but in a different sort. We were selected by MEDC, one of 15 statewide organizations, to use funds that are provided by state of Michigan or the Federal CARES Act to distribute these funds to area businesses. The first one was in March. We were selected to distribute $200,000 to our two counties, as well as Gladwin and Gratiot County. In fact, if we could maybe pull up the handout that we had, didn't make the packet.
Jim, it's not possible to pull that up. We didn't get it in time to put it in the packet to be able to pull it up.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, right. So if you take a look, take a look at that second underlined. This is the Michigan Small Business Relief Program. Call your attention to Isabella, which had the largest amount. This was divided by population. 50 businesses were funded with an average amount of $1,680, but the grants range from $1,000 to $5,000. When I say 50 businesses, the vast majority, I think all but 3 or 4, were in the city of Mount Pleasant. Next one was the Michigan Small Business Relief Program loans, and that was in April, and we were asked to recommend to the MEDC 4 different businesses for $50,000 loans at 0.25% interest and a 10-year payback, which is an outstanding set of terms. So we did do that, and 3 of the loans went to Mount Pleasant businesses, city of Mount Pleasant businesses, that is, and 1 went to Clare. Those were just recently released by the MEDC, the press release last week. Both of these programs, you can find out who all the grantees were on the MEDC website. Next was Match on Main. The city asked me to run this program for you, for the downtown area. This was very competitive. There's only $1 million available throughout the entire state. The MEDC said that we're only guaranteeing 1 recipient for each of the 10 regions. There might be 2, but definitely no more than 1 was guaranteed. So we applied on behalf of the city of Mount Pleasant, the downtown area. We had 22 businesses we submitted, actually 23. And the maximum amount was $50,000. We did get $48,000. The reason that we did have 1 stricken by the MEDC was that they felt that they were outside of the downtown limits. So otherwise we were able to get the grants for 22 downtown Mount Pleasant businesses in either the amount of $2,000 or $2,500. All of the money from these 3 have already been distributed and have been received by these grantees. We also had additional grant funding through Dow Chemical, Chemical Bank, and the Clare Community Foundation, totaling $45,000. This went to 31 small businesses and nonprofits in Isabella and Clare counties, about evenly divided. And a lot of this money also went to businesses and nonprofits within the city limits. Now, this is what we're working on now. In fact, we've been working all day, and I was working on it as I was getting ready for this. So the state passed Senate Bill 690, Public Act 123 of 2020, approving $100 million in CARES Act funding. Our share of this was 3.5 million. They asked us to do 2 additional counties. So that would be a total of Aranac, Clare, Gladwin, Gratiot, Isabella, and Midland. We received 870 applications, and we are funding about 840 of these. Now, the ones we're not funding were duplicates, where a business that might have had their employees attached to one division applied on behalf of all the divisions, but it was all one address and one business. So, we eliminated about 28 or 30 due to duplications. So in other words, everybody is getting funded something on this one, grants ranging from $1,000 to $15,000 based on their scores. The first batch of funds went out the door today. We do ACH through Isabella Bank. And so we had to do, once we announced who was getting what, we had to process all the contracts for all of these recipients and then get their banking information. And we just paid out our first batch this afternoon. I did ask Katie Moore to check on something, and so far, none of the businesses that have received any of these grants has gone out of business. None of them. So now we can't guarantee that that won't be the case as we continue through this process, but so far so good. We have had some business closures in the area, but none of them were grant recipients. So we feel pretty good about how this is working. And we have so much testimony. We're going to put it in our annual report. So many have said that this was a lifesaver and encourage them to stay in business. So I would offer to you that this is not a time for doing things in a traditional way, but if we can provide this grant funding for all of these businesses and keep them in business, that's the best thing we can do. And if you scroll down to the next page, you can see the other players. These are my peers. So you have the Right Place in Grand Rapids. You've got us, Saginaw Future, Lansing Economic Area Partnership, Southwest Michigan First, Ann Arbor Spark, Oakland County Economic Development, Macomb County Economic Development, the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, and others. So these are the 15 organizations that were selected, and you can see we're right in the middle of the list with the 6 counties that we're administrating on behalf of. So that's pretty the wrap of what I wanted to share. So Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions.
All right. Jim, thanks for your presentation, and I really appreciate all the work you've been doing for our local businesses. It seems like it's really going, really paying its dividends, and hopefully when you come back next quarter, you'll have the same good news for us. Commissioner Alsager looks like she has a question.
Yes, my question is if there were any duplicates between businesses that got both a loan and a grant.
Not between the loans and the grants. Let me explain that. The grants on the first round, the relief program in March, you had to have 50 employees or less. For the loans, you could have 100 employees or less. So there were different employee levels there. So that's why we did the 4. None of those, the 4 that we did for the loans, none of them were eligible for the grants. Similarly, on Match on Main, those were all businesses that were also, you had to have not received a grant through the relief program earlier in March to be eligible for that. But then when we had this larger amount of money, we did pass the state passed emergency legislation, because what we were finding was, if we excluded all these prior programs, that we were really limiting our list of businesses that could receive this money. And people were saying, well, hey, I got $1,000 on this other one, and now you've got a lot more money. And so we did rush through some legislation that said that they could be eligible, but they couldn't have their grand total of grants add up to more than $20,000. So that was, now you couldn't like double, triple dip. You had a grand total that you could receive, and that was it. So we were excited to get that that legislation through, because we had a lot of businesses that needed additional help by the time we got to June.
Are there any other questions for Mr. McBride? Okay. Well, Jim, thanks again for being here and
thank
all the
you.
work you've
Thanks,
been
Jim.
doing.
Thank
I
you. We've been
know-
burning the midnight oil here. So get this stuff done. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Yep. Next on our agenda, we have a census update from our city planner, Mr. Jacob Kane.
Good evening, members of the commission. Just a brief update on our efforts on the 2020 census. If I could get the slides up. So at the present time, the census deadline for self-response remains at the end of this month on September 30th. I have an update from when this presentation was prepared this morning. We're now at 61.2% self-response rate in the city. Within the Traverse City Area Census Office area, which is basically all of the northern part of the Lower Peninsula and the entire Upper Peninsula of the state of Michigan. That's the office coordinating the follow-up work with our census enumerators. As of tonight, we're at 72.8% of that follow-up work being completed. So that's of those non-responsive households, the Census Bureau has made contact and resolved 72.8% of those in our region. There is still time to self-respond. So if your household has not been in touch with an enumerator and has not self-responded to date, you can visit my2020census.gov or call 844-330-2020 to fill out your census. We do know that we have census enumerators out working in the city. They've been out for over a month at this point. They are going door to door. They're doing their best to get information about non-responsive households. This may include census enumerators visiting households that have completed their census in order to get information about neighbors or properties that you might own that are income properties. We would just encourage you to be kind to your census enumerators. For the most part, they are people that are from our community. They may not be from the city of Mount Pleasant, but most of them are from our region, and they have a very hard job to do in a very short time frame. And so please help them if they come to your door. In terms of our activities with the city's Complete Count Committee, since your last update, we've hung over 2,000 door tags at student apartments in the city. We've distributed over 1,200 flyers with support from the League of Women Voters at the Isabella Community Soup Kitchen and at the Strickler Center through their activities. We distributed over 700 fidget spinners and hand sanitizers and 200 chapsticks to CMU students during their welcome week. We've had over 100 social media posts by the city about the census since January, and those are going to continue right up through the end of self-response election this month. We've been advertising this month with Central Michigan Life. We recently had an ad campaign with the Morning Sun. We also have ads up on the radio on WCFX, and we previously had several months of ads on WCZY as well. We're continuing to distribute hand sanitizers, both to our recreation sports participants and also at the City Hall customer service counters. And we were able to get over about 50,000 drink napkins out in a recent campaign to 5 local establishments with the goal primarily of reaching the student population in the community, as we think that's one of our weak spots in self-response. So we're continuing to work as we reach the end of the campaign. Just about 2 days ago, we had a op-ed published in CM Life from the Complete Count Committee, encouraging students to participate in the census. Previously, in the last week or so, we had the Morning Sun completed an article based on our op-ed submission, encouraging folks to do the same in the general community. So that's where we stand right now. We still have a ways to go. We're hopeful that our enumerators will be successful in their outreach in the community and getting us to the complete count that we need. And I'd welcome any questions from the commission, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Kane, thank you very much for your presentation. It's good to see those numbers finally up, and kind of over the summer, we were kind of huddling around 50% or so. Are there any questions for Mr. Kane? All right. Well, thank you very much. And we have 2 weeks left, so make sure everybody gets out there and fills out their census. And you know someone who hasn't done it yet, go out and help them out. Really appreciate it. Okay. Next on our agenda is additions and deletions to the agenda. Are there any items that need to be added or deleted from tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing no hands up. Next is our public input on agenda items. This is a chance for the public to comment on items that are on the agenda tonight. And if you're with us tonight, you can go to participants and then hit the raised hand button, which is in the lower right-hand corner. Or if you're on your telephone, I believe you can hit the number 9 and it should raise your hand. So I'll just wait a minute and see if anyone would like to comment on agenda items tonight. Manager Ridley, did we have any emailed comments on agenda items?
No, Mayor, we have not received any emailed comments yet.
Okay. Well, not seeing any hands up, I will close the public input on agenda items. And we can move on to our receipt of petitions and communications.
Yes, Mayor, in this section of the agenda tonight, you have the report on pending items, including the monthly report on citizen complaints received. You have the July minutes of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and then you have 11 communications that were received regarding the census. And the first one of those was from Chris Rowley of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, indicating that agency's support for the master plan and highlighting a couple of projects that the CVB is particularly interested in. The other 10 communications are from various individuals, many of which did not include their address, so we can't tell you for sure if they're city residents or if they're just related to the city in some way. But all of those 10 communications were related to interest in mountain biking trails. And a couple of the communications were sent to my office, and they had an indication asking to share those with the city commission. But because we knew some others had gone directly to the recreation office, we contacted Chris Bundy and asked that all of those be brought together in one place so that you could see them all. The Parks and Recreation Commission is having their public hearing on the master plan on September 22nd. So I would recommend that you just wait to see what the Parks and Recreation Commission recommends in regard to these mountain biking trails, because they too will receive all 10 of those communications, and they will be making a recommendation to you on the master plan, as will the Planning Commission. But just for the record, the 10 people that we heard from include the following individuals: Andy Foster, Ross Miller, Charlie Harrison, Julie Cunningham, Malcolm Fox, 2 communications from Nathan Tubbs, Brad Wheeler, Annie Vandewater, and Patrick Richards, for the record. And that's the extent of our petitions and communications this evening.
Okay. Thank you very much, Manager Ridley. Next on our calendar is the consent calendar. And are there any items that need to be removed from the consent calendar tonight? All right, seeing no hands up. Manager Ridley, can you walk us through our consent calendar tonight?
Yes, it's a fairly lengthy consent calendar tonight, but the first 2 items are approval of the minutes of your regular meeting of August 24th, as well as the closed session minutes of that same date. Under bids, we have 1 bid that we're recommending for you this evening, and it is through the State of Michigan My Deal program. And this program has a vehicle available that we can receive before the end of this year and it will meet the needs of the department for a replacement vehicle that we're looking at for the Detectives Bureau. As indicated in the memo, the amount of the bid is slightly over the $30,000 that was budgeted, but we will be able to cover that overage within the existing police department budget. So we're recommending award of the bid to LaFontaine Chrysler dealership for $34,515. The next two items on the consent calendar are asking you to set public hearings for your next meeting, which is September 28th. And the first item, which is item number 9 on your agenda, is a public hearing to amend the ordinance related to overnight parking restrictions. And as you know, currently overnight parking is not allowed in the downtown area from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. all year round. And we are not recommending any changes to that portion of the ordinance. The portion we're recommending changes to has to do with the overnight parking in all of the other areas in the city. And currently overnight parking is allowed in the rest of the city between April 1st to December 1st. And it's prohibited for 3 hours every night for the 4 months between December through the end of March. And due to the reasons outlined in the memo in the agenda packet, we're recommending a public hearing be set to remove this 3-hour restriction from December 1st to April 1st. And it would instead be replaced with the ability to declare a snow emergency, in which case the days and times of the restrictions would be communicated to the department or to the public so that we could effectively clear the streets. And so the public hearing we're recommending be held on that on September 28th. The second item for a public hearing is on the revolving loan fund loan, the CDBG revolving loan fund loan that was given to Gursky Limited. And one of the requirements of that loan was for the creation of at least one full-time job. And the company has reported that they've actually exceeded that requirement. So the loan requirements outline the need for a public hearing for an opportunity for input on the attainment of that goal of the loan. The next item on the consent calendar is we're recommending a 3-year agreement with Consumers Energy for 3 additional locations under the demand response program. And many of you may recall we entered into this type of agreement last year with 4 of our locations. And we committed to a 4-year agreement for the wastewater treatment plant, but only a 1-year agreement for the other 3 locations so that we could see how it worked. And what this agreement does is basically it commits that the city will convert over to our generator power when requested by consumers at some of their peak times to reduce the load on the power system. And under the agreement, consumers can request that we do that switch over up to 5 times per year. Regardless of how many times they request that we do it, even if it's 0, they give us a credit on our electricity bills. And as a matter of fact, last year, we were not requested to convert over to generator power at all during the year. So based on the savings to the electricity bills, we're recommending approval of the 3-year agreement for the other 3 locations. The next item on the consent calendar is the receipt of next year's operating budget. As you know, the city charter requires the city manager to propose an annual operating budget to you by the first meeting in September. And that budget was made available online today, and we have printed copies available for the commissioners to have delivered to you. At your next meeting, Chris Saladin will provide an overview presentation of the budget. And then, as you know, we have work sessions scheduled throughout the fall to go into more in-depth questions that you may have on it. But tonight we're recommending you go ahead and set the public hearing for November 9th to obtain public input into it. And just as a teaser before Chris's presentation, I would like to tell you that the general fund budget that we have presented to you in this document is a balanced budget in the general fund without having to use any funds from the fund balance, which we think is very good news. But the caution that we have to give is it's dependent on a number of assumptions related to state shared revenue and property values that the assumptions we made, we won't know the answers to until later this year or early next year. but so far it looks fairly promising. The next item on the consent calendar is our standard process of amending the budget for the current year. And as you know, many assumptions change since the time you approved the budget in December of each year. And the communication from Assistant Finance Director Chris Saladin in your packet goes into quite a bit of detail about a number of the changes that were made to the budget since last December. But I would like to highlight just a couple of the more significant ones. Probably the most significant change on the general fund side is it reflects the expected state shared revenue loss from the state as of the state's May revenue estimating conference. It may continue to be impacted further this year, depending on what action the state takes with their current year budget, because we crossed 2 of their fiscal years, but this is as of their May estimates. And that ended up being about a $228,000 reduction in our revenues. But in spite of that, with all of the other changes that are factored into the budget, this is showing that the general fund will end up this year using just under $57,000 from the fund balance instead of the approximately $20,000 that we had projected when you approved the budget. So it's not as significant of a change because staff has already done a good job of trying to trim expenses where they can to help keep the budget in balance. The other significant change that I would point out is in both the water and sewer funds, you will see some decreased revenues in both of those funds. And that's primarily due to the fact that, as you know, CMU eliminated the face-to-face classes back in March, and that lasted through all of the rest of the spring semester, through much of the summer classes. And there's an increasing number of online options available for this fall. So those types of things are having an impact on our water and sewer revenues throughout the entire community. We have applied for a number of grants that are related to the pandemic, but instead of going to those now, under our announcement section, I'll give you an update on where we are with some of those grants that may impact positively both of these budgets. The next item on the consent calendar is we're asking you just to receive the tribal 2% requests at this meeting. They were sent out to you separately from the packet, but at the next meeting, we will ask you to prioritize your top 5 requests before we send them to the tribal council before their September 30th deadline. And then last on the consent calendar is the approval of payrolls and warrants.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. I would ask for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented. Commissioner Alsager? Mary, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I've done that too many times. I move to accept the consent calendar as presented.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Kirschbacher?
Support.
Is there any discussion? Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, I would just like to announce that I have some reservations about the ordinance change for the parking, eliminating the in the middle of the night 2 to 5 parking off the streets. Some of the commissioners have heard my concerns before, but just so the public is aware that during the new adoption of the zoning ordinance, unfortunately, there's no parking requirements for any new construction or building apartments or building a home, a duplex, a quadplex. Within our new zoning ordinance, there is no parking requirements for developers to have to accommodate their tenants on site. I was told of our 2 to 5 between the winter months not being allowed parking on the city streets, which gave me some comfortability to allow the zoning ordinance, or for my vote to be in the positive for the zoning ordinance at the time. I brought up my concerns several times about the no parking requirements when there are new builds or new apartments being built. And that was the safeguard for people not parking in front of single-family homes or in front of your resident or business when the tenants aren't accommodated on site. So with the elimination of this 4 months of not being able to park on the street, and now you can park on the streets, developers will be more apt to not provide parking on site and then turn our city streets into parking lots, which very well could be that they are parking in front of your house or your business every single day to accommodate the tenants that have built, for the landlord that has built an apartment complex or a housing unit with multiple tenants. The remark has been, well, they can do that now. They can park in front of your house now. And that's true, but people wouldn't park in front of my house now if they had a parking spot in their own parcel. In their own apartment complex, they're not going to be parking in the street in front of my house 24/7 if they can be accommodated on their own parcil. So
Commissioner
I'm
Kelly?
sorry, I should have brought this off the consent calendar to have that, forgive me. But I am concerned, and I think the community should also be concerned of this ordinance change, which could result in apartment buildings being built in your neighborhood and the tenants parking in front of your home 24/7. So
I just want to make a clarification for the council and also the public at home that tonight we are not approving that ordinance amendment, that we are just setting a public hearing on the ordinance. And
yes,
so I do appreciate the concern and comments by Commissioner Yost, but I just want to make sure that tonight we're just voting to set a public hearing so that the public can review the ordinance, make comment, and then we will have a time to discuss that ordinance at length.
absolutely. Just wanted to bring attention to the community of what that ordinance was all about and how it could impact them before 2 weeks from now.
Sure. Thank you.
Mhm.
Commissioner Elsager.
This is again, probably a newbie question for Nancy. When I look at the payrolls and warrants, I see some abbreviations that I have no idea what they are. So there's one that says UB refund.
That is for a utility billing refund.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. And then I saw kind of a large one for Block Farm operations. And what do they do for the city?
I believe off the top of my head that they did our lime residuals removal out at the water plant. So they removed the lime from our sludge ponds. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, I believe that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Tolis.
Yeah, I was a little slow on the draw on item number 9 also. I should have had that, made a motion to remove that. I have a question for Manager Ridley. On the September 9th, 2020 letter that went out, it says snow plowing rarely occurs between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the city. Where do we get that from?
Snow plowing of our city streets does rarely happens during those hours. Sometimes it does, but it's not a regular occurrence.
So the main streets like Broadway and the rest of them, Brown, and some of the other ones are first priority. You're telling me those are not done between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m.?
Depending on the level of snow, there are some times where they are done during that time period, but it's not every week type occurrence.
Well, I've been around for 40 some years. One of my businesses is commercial snow removal. And I can tell you that most of the major streets are done between 2 and 5 a.m. And I guess I'll have to bring it up when we have the public meeting, but there's going to be a lot of problems here that weren't even considered. You're not going to plow the streets between 2 and 5 and allow these cars to park there, which is going to entail the city is going to occur many more expenses. It's a safety hazard because once you don't plow the spots and you go around them, then you're going to have to send a truck or a loader back to clean those spots, which have froze down at that point. And then you've got underbody scrapers running down the roads at 30 or 40 miles an hour, scraping those and doing damage to underbody scrapers. They're not meant to, to pound ice. Well, I screwed up because it should have been removed from the agenda, but I guess I'll have to bring up my points later. Thank you.
Commissioner Roonan.
Sorry, yeah, I had questions about the same item number 9. I had thought, is this something we're just going to do for a year as an I know we're going to discuss it at a different time, but at that different time, we're discussing a temporary thing, right? I thought, isn't that what I remember hearing?
The way the ordinance is drafted, it would not be a temporary change. It would be a change, but the commission always has the ability to revisit ordinances at any point in time and make changes to it.
I thought we were doing a trial type thing, so I was a little surprised when I read that. It's not enough to pull it off the calendar, but okay, yeah. I apologize. Thank you.
That's okay. Just a reminder again, we're just setting a public hearing for our next meeting, and then I'm sure we will have plenty of time to discuss the merits and propose changes if need be. And so, any other discussion on the consent calendar tonight? All right, I just wanted to say, I thought that the memo about the budget amendments from Chris Saladin, I thought was very clear and very user-friendly for not only us, but the public, and really outlines, the changes that have happened over the year. And so I really appreciate that, and look forward to the budget discussions as we move forward through the year. So thank you very much, Chris. With that, I think we can go to a roll call vote on the consent calendar tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph,
Yes.
and motion carries.
All right, next on our agenda is item number 11, which is to consider request from the Housing Commission, payment in lieu of taxes, or pilot. And to introduce this topic, I think I'll hand it over to Manager Ridley, and before we begin our discussion.
So let me start out by indicating that this pilot discussion is different than most of you would generally be familiar with, because typically what happens is we have a tax-paying entity that either wants to build or buy a piece of property to create some type of affordable housing. And in order to keep the rents low, the purchaser requests that the city make the property tax exempt. And in turn, the owner will make a payment in lieu of taxes for that property. The request before you tonight is a little bit different, because in this situation, we have the Mount Pleasant Housing Commission, which is already a tax exempt entity and is not required to make property tax payments. And the Housing Commission is looking to purchase an additional piece of property which has rental housing units on it, and it's currently owned by Community Mental Health. And the state law related to housing commissions explicitly states that property owned by the Housing Commission for their service purposes are tax exempt. But the state law goes on further to give the local governing board, i.e. yourselves, the ability to impose a payment in lieu of taxes instead. And the law says that the payment in lieu of taxes cannot be more than 10% of the shelter rents. So the Housing Commission is interested in knowing your decision on this as to whether you're going to take the opportunity to require a pilot on this property before they complete the purchase transaction, because it obviously impacts the financial structure of the project. In this project, the housing units would not be receiving any federal subsidies, but the Housing Commission would be charging rents to the renters. And in order to keep it affordable, they, in their intended rental class, is individuals who are at or below 80% of the average median income. And so because of wanting to keep those as affordable rates, the Housing Commission is asking that you consider a pilot that would be at 0% for the first 5 years. And tonight on the phone call, we have the Housing Commission Director, Anessa Haste, with us, and the consultant that they've been using on this project, Bruce Johnston, and they're available to answer any detailed questions you might have in regard to their plans for this project. And we're not asking you to make a final decision tonight because, quite frankly, any pilot that you would consider doing requires the drafting of an ordinance and the setting of a public hearing so that the public has time to make comments on it before you can make a decision. But we are looking for your guidance on how you would like us to draft that ordinance to bring back to you at your next meeting. And we've given you 3 options of how that ordinance could be drafted. It could be drafted as a 0% pilot for 5 years, as has been requested by the Housing Commission. And you could have that to set the public hearing based on. Or it could be a pilot that requires some percentage of the rents to be paid, anywhere up to 10%. And we would need your guidance on what percentage you're looking for so the public knows what they're commenting on. And then the last option is one that has been done in Big Rapids and we believe Boyne City, where in that case, the local governing board approved a 0% pilot, but also required a municipal services agreement between the city and the Housing Commission so that the city did obtain some revenue from the unit. So those, I believe, are the 3 options that we're looking for your guidance on so we can have something formally drafted for you to set a public hearing on at your next meeting. And as I indicated, both Anessa and Bruce are with us if you have detailed questions on the project they are looking to purchase. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Manager Ridley. I just wanted to, before we start our discussion, we do have Anessa and Bruce with us. And if there are questions for Anessa and Bruce, just so we have clarity for the commission and those at home, if you want to direct those questions to me, and then I can recognize Anessa or Bruce, and that way we can have clarity on our back and forth and not have, people talking over each other. And so that would be very helpful for our discussion, especially over Zoom. And so with that introduction and with Anessa and Bruce with us, I would entertain a motion from the commission on one of our options, and this is just to give direction. This is obviously not a final decision. So, Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, I would like to see or make a motion that the attorney draft a agreement for 10% of the rents from this project.
Okay, and so Commissioner, just for clarification, so Commissioner Gillis, you are recommending option 2 with the 10% pilot based off rent revenue, correct?
Yes.
All right, and then Commissioner Tolis?
That's the question I had, Mayor, was she supporting option 2 or option 3? Do we have to have a service agreement with option 2?
Option 2 would be a pilot program. And so the pilot the pilots are, that's a taxation tool. And then that means that some of that revenue would be shared among other entities. The service agreement is separate, although similar in terms of a percentage of rent, but we wouldn't be sharing that tax revenue with other governing entities.
I will support option 2.
Okay. So we have a motion and support, and I will open up the floor for discussion on, and just to be clarified again, this is option 2 and 10% pilot is what Commissioner Gillis has motioned and seconded by Commissioner Toles. Commissioner Elsager. Mary, you're muted.
Thank you. Mayor, I would like to have a little description of the project.
Okay. So I'll let Anessa or Bruce, if you would like to describe the project. I believe it's a purchase of a new property, but I'm sure you'll have more details. And so.
Property is a 12-unit, all 2 bedrooms, and it was previously owned by the Community Mental Health Facilities Board, and they were using it for their clients, and they decided that they were going to put the building up for sale to supplement some of their costs for the remodeling and infrastructure work that they had done recently for their main offices. And so initially we found out about it because we were housing some of their tenants here at the high rise in our public housing program. And we began kind of discussing with them the idea of trying to keep those units affordable for the community. And that's how the project got started.
Commissioner Elsager, or did you have any follow-up questions or?
No, that was what I wanted to know about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Ronan?
I'm just, I'm one of those commissioners who's just not as knowledgeable about this. My basic question is there some investment taking place? I mean, is this just a piece of property you're picking up that doesn't need any work, that people are just going to move in, or is there some planned investment to bring it up to some rentable standard or something? I'm just curious.
Hi, this is Bruce Johnson. I've been working with the Housing Commission in a consulting process through the whole purchase agreement and producing pro formas and looking at what they want to do. The biggest reason that they're here asking for reduced pilot or taxable value for a period of time is to do those needed upgrades, especially through the heating system and the electrical systems that are involved for the 12 units, and to be able to keep the rents at an affordable level, as Ms. Ridley discussed earlier, so that they're able to achieve both goals of rehabilitating the building within a short period of time and keep the rents affordable, as is their desire as a housing commission to work with affordability and provide workforce housing, because that's what this would end up being primarily.
Thank you. That answers it. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Gillis, I see your hand is up. I don't know if that was from last time or if you had further discussion or questions.
Yeah, last time I just made the motion.
Okay.
I feel that we should at least get some taxable value from this property. If updates had to occur to, I'm assuming it is already rental ready because Community Health has been using that. I have heard the same stories from every single entity that asks for a pilot from the city of Mount Pleasant, that they do not want to pay their fair share of taxes, even, well, because almost every pilot has been for affordable housing. Chase Run is a very good example. We extended that pilot after 20 years because they hadn't saved enough money to replace their HVAC or their roofs on Chase Run apartments on Isabella. So thank you, community members, for actually allowing them to do that, because we extended their pilot so they wouldn't have to pay taxes. The 20-year pilot in that instance was to give them a helping hand to be able to do this type of housing. Yet after the 20 years expiration, they came back to the city commission and asked for more years because they hadn't updated their HVAC and front doors and roofing that we are now not paying for, but we gave them their taxes back. So yes, the taxpayers did pay for that. So my concerns are that the parcel can be taxed with our acknowledgement as a commission. I think $10,000 is not much money to be asking for these apartments. It's already built. It's not a new build. It is already built and fully functional. Right now it's being used as rental apartments. If there was a lot of updates that needed to be done, I would have hoped the purchaser would have negotiated a better purchase price if there were so many updates that needed to be done in the building. That's what usually homeowners do if they haven't maintained their house and they're wanting to sell it. And the buyer says, well, I have to do this, that, and the other. The purchase price usually is lowered to accommodate what hasn't been upgraded for however long that apartment building has been standing there. And it has been a tax exempt. We have already relinquished our taxes from that building. And I'm not sure how many years that has been already off the tax rolls, but that does give us an opportunity to collect something on this parcel and also dispersing it to the other government entities that are also entitled to those taxes rather than the commission deciding not to collect them. I also just want to share some history because I have been in this forum talking about pilots and how much taxes we don't receive. And at this time, we have about 10 pilots already in Mount Pleasant that we are not collecting, or we're not collecting full taxes. Divine House, Riverview, Pheasant Run, Oak Tree, Oxford Row, Winchester Towers, Chase Run, Dover's Court, which we only collect $65 a year for Dover's Court because the city commission at the time, back in the 1980s, wrote it at $1 per unit. So every year since then, we've only collected $65 total for that apartment complex. Chase Run 2 and then Mill 2 Limited Partnership, which is right across from Mountain Town Station. So we have given many pilots already in this community. I was also part of a citizen initiative, or excuse me, a citizen referendum, which we had to collect enough petitions, signatures on petitions. The city commission gave a pilot to Rivers Bluff, and within 30 days, we were able to get enough signatures to let it go to a vote. And the community members who voted that pilot down. And the developer was putting in senior apartments and told the community that he couldn't possibly do this development without a pilot. And lo and behold, when the community members decided to turn that pilot down because we had so many of them off the tax rolls at that time, the developer still built Rivers Bluff, still got subsidized housing, and still was being able to make it happen and a profit. So I just can't give our tax dollars away. We just gave 12 years of a tax abatement on parcel B. So I think this is fair to not only the Housing Commission to ask $10,000, but also for our city taxpayers and the other entities that are getting a portion of that. So that's why I made the motion this way. And I just wanted to fill the other commissioners in on some of the history and how many pilots we also have on the books right now. So thank you.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Building, can you guys hear me? How long has this building been owned by CMH? Do you know, Anessa?
Question. I think we bought it in the 80s. I know that.
I can't quite hear you.
I think it was in the 80s when they bought it. I'm not sure when it transferred ownership to them, actually. I know they weren't the original owners, so they didn't build it, but I'm not sure when they took ownership. But they have taken good care of it. It does need, it's an older building, so it does need some things that just over time need to be replaced.
Okay. Obviously, it's not been on the tax rolls for a couple of years, it sounds like, but and it's for low-income housing. I'm assuming the individuals that live in there now are probably ones that will continue to live there.
No, so when they were getting ready to sell the building, they actually gave all of the tenants notice to move.
Oh, okay.
So it is currently vacant. It does need, just some things to get the apartments ready for to be able to rent. But yeah, they decided that it would be easier, I guess, on their end if their clients weren't all still residents there, and that was additionally part of why they decided to sell it, was that the community standards, I guess, for community mental health, that the state has changed the way they want their clients living within the community. They don't want to see them segregated to one property. They want to see them integrated, and so they decided they would change the model. Instead of having a large property like that with all of their clients, that they would decide to offload that one, and it also would assist them with the construction. Like I mentioned, they needed some extra capital to do the improvements that they have recently done with their infrastructure and their offices.
Okay. Now, do you expect that after 5 years that that the apartment complex will be creating a revenue to pay taxes?
Yeah, I would think so. This is a new opportunity. Normally, housing commissions don't run non-federally funded sites. So this is a little bit outside of the box, but it was something that we wanted to take on because we thought it was important to keep those units affordable and in the community. So the 5 years gives us a little bit of a buffer to take on this new opportunity and have the revenue to do the replacements that are needed. We are Riverview and Pheasant Run, those are both our sites. We're public housing. We're funded through HUD, and we have capital funding that comes from HUD. So our property replacements and upgrades are all funded federally. And I think we've done a really good job maintaining our properties and our units. So I'm confident in our ability to maintain and operate them. But with this being a new venture for us, to try to keep them affordable without the federal funding, that's why we wanted to ask for the reduced pilot.
Okay. And would the 10% be an outrageous amount for the units to be able to afford?
We've run different numbers with the pro forma, and Bruce can probably field that one because he's my expert on the numbers.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you understand that we provided financial information to the city through performance with actual costs, actual rents, actual day-to-day expenses. and showed the need for what we're asking. That's the reason we came for 5 years, because we do believe in 5 years at a lower property tax, it will allow us to undertake some of the things that should be done sooner than later, and will assure a strengthening of the budget so that there is a reserve level that will be sufficient to be able to withstand any of the unknowns that might have happened in the next 5 years, that you never know when you're getting into something like this.
That's very true. And I do believe that Mount Pleasant does, Isabella County is not considered a very rich county. And Mount Pleasant does need affordable housing for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes. When you say affordable housing, is that the same thing as low income housing?
No, this is workforce housing. This would be based for the working class folks. The rents are scheduled at about $780 a month. That includes all utilities for 2 bedrooms. We wouldn't be asking for subsidy from the federal government, from the city, or from anyone else. It would be a standalone project that would manage its own dollars, have its own reserves, supply a potential profit to the Housing Commission to be utilized for other affordable housing projects down the road.
Okay, great. And I don't know if you'll know this number, but in the information we were given in our packet, it was the rents would be targeted towards people that are 80% of the average median income. Do you know what that number is, the 80%? Because I get conflicting information when somebody's talking about the city's median income versus Isabella County's median income. So just to give me an idea of what 80% of the median income that you're looking at.
Sure. We use the information from the HUD website, and for Isabella County, it's the county numbers, and the 80% is what's considered low income, and then they also list like a 50%, and then there's the extremely low. And for our programs that are subsidized, our public housing, the 80% is also 80% or below is where our tenants fall. And then for our Section 8 vouchers, it's the extremely low, that or below. But for this site, for let's say one person at the 80%, you're looking at just shy of $37,000 annually. For 2 people, it's at just over 42. So what HUD says is affordable is around 30% of your monthly income. And so if you do the math out, those numbers, what we would be charging for rent would be well within their affordability range at that 30% of the monthly income.
Okay, thank you. Let me just reiterate that. So one person's 80%, $37,000 annually. And for a 2-person, it's 42,000. And of course, these are 2 bedrooms, so it could be rented to a family if you put a couple kids in 1 bedroom. Okay. And then, so do you think that it would 9,000 would be reasonable to give to the city of Mount Pleasant and the other taxing entities?
I don't know that it's unreasonable. It's that with this being a new property and us not having a lot of non-federal dollars available to us, that's the other side of this, is that we're funded federally, and our federal dollars are only allowed to be used on certain expenditures. Normally, we wouldn't be able to go out and purchase a property like this to have it as affordable housing without any subsidy attached. Basically, we have expanded and we run a contract management with the Charlevoix Housing Commission. So once our expenses for that are paid, any additional income from that is revenue. And that has given us a little bit of a fund in order to purchase this property. But we're limited in that there's not a lot of capital that's just free flowing, that if something immediately breaks or we have major issues right away, we don't have the availability of a bankroll to fix that. So this would give us, the 5 years gives us a little bit of a cushion if we need to replace something or have any emergencies pop up.
And when you say you're in partnership with Charlevoix Housing Commit, so is the monies put together then?
No, so the Charlevoix Housing Commission is a totally separate housing commission. They just contract with us for administrative services.
I see.
And they have 62 units up there that are mostly elderly and disabled tenants.
Okay. Well, I can see with the rents, when you're starting at $780 a month, I'm not sure what the purchase price on that building was. I'm hoping you got a good deal and, the community mental health worked with you. But I'm hoping that you can accommodate at least the small ask. I don't think that's very much taxes on, and that big of an apartment. It's not that large of an apartment, I should say, medium, size apartment building. So I'm hoping this could at least give us both, a little bit of a win. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Anessa. This is geared for workforce housing, and the main mission of the Housing Commission is geared towards more like low income people who are either housing unsteady or homeless. And how will this project help those people?
So this project would still be aimed at low income individuals, but it would be working individuals. So that kind of in the middle where they're not extremely low income, they're not going to be in a public housing where their rent is income based. They can afford, to pay rent, but may not be able to afford some of the market rate rents that are available around town. We look at some of the 2-bedroom units around town, especially if you are a single parent, working parent, or you have 2 people that are working part-time that need to afford their rent. And if you look at the student housing prices, a lot of times that does fall into the unaffordable range. So this would just cater to those individuals that are working but still low income and need affordable housing.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Toles?
Yeah, I had a couple of quick questions, Mayor. I couldn't hear Ms. Heiss at first. When this was purchased from CMH, was this always an apartment unit?
So we have not purchased it yet. And it is always, I believe, always been in a apartment building. There's 12 2-bedrooms on the property.
There's 12 units then.
Yep.
And are your projections that you feel that after purchasing this property, doing the renovations, that you can compete in the market and fill this with workforce families?
Yeah, I do. I think that the need is there, and especially with including all of the utilities, I think that that's a very reasonable rate for a 2-bedroom unit, and I don't think we'll have any issues filling them.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gillis.
Just one last thing. Also included in our packet was the fact that 10% pilot, which is consistent with subsidized properties owned by the Mount Pleasant Housing Commission, would estimated to generate $9,000 annually for this location. So at least with this motion, the way it stands, it is consistent across the board. And being that we are not giving a pilot to low-income housing, this is literally for workforce housing of one person making $37,000 a year and a two-person household making 42. I would hope that we could be accommodated by a simple $9,000 a year to be consistent with the other pilots. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion from the commission?
Mayor, before you take a vote, I just want to make sure everybody understands that what you are voting on is just having a ordinance drafted. You are not actually approving any pilot this evening. So I just want to make that clear. We would draft one, bring it back to you, have a public hearing. The Housing Commission may have additional information as they rerun the additional numbers to be able to answer some of your affordability questions again. But all we would be doing is drafting based on how you vote on this motion tonight.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, the motion is to, as manager, really draft an ordinance, and it would be for a 5-year pilot at 10% of the rental revenue, which we will consider at a later date. Seeing no other discussion, I guess we will move to a roll call vote on the motion.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Hold on. Commissioner Ronan?
I apologize. I'm not quite understanding the procedure. So if we vote no on this, does that mean we talk about another option, or does that mean that we're just not going to draft anything? I mean, I'm a little confused about that. So I just want to be clear about where we're at.
Sure. So Commissioner Ronan, if this motion fails, we certainly can pick up one of the other options at our that are in front of us.
Okay, I'm just okay. I apologize.
There could be a discussion of a different percentage of a pilot. There could be the municipal service agreement. Those are all things possible. So with that, we'll go to a roll call vote on the motion in front of us, which is to draft an ordinance for a 5-year pilot at 10%.
okay. Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
I'll say no at this point.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher. Amy, I can't hear you.
No.
Okay.
No.
And Vice Mayor, or excuse me, Mayor Joseph.
No.
And so that is 3-3, and the motion fails.
I don't want to belabor this, but I'd like to make a motion for option 1. And this still can be discussed, right, if other things come in. Right.
I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys can hear me well, but I think my internet connection's a little slow. But from what I heard from the vote, it was a 3-3. It was a tied vote, so that means the motion fails. I'm going to recognize Vice Mayor Perschbacher. I see her hand is up.
I'd like to move to direct the staff and the city attorney to draft an ordinance compliant with option 1.
And that needs a second. Commissioner Ronan?
I'll second that.
Okay. And I'll open up the floor for discussion on option 1, which is a 0% pilot for 5 years. Commissioner Tolis?
I have to agree with Commissioner Gillis on this. If this was to put forward for low income, not workforce, I would have went with 0, but it's not fulfilling that. And that's what we were looking for. And I don't understand why we would go to 0 on that. I could see if it was actually helping low income people that need it. Yes, we could do a 0, but I will be voting against this.
Commissioner Elsager?
As I was reading through these options, my first instinct was to go with option 1, just because it is very generous and it's only for 5 years. And since it's only for 5 years, that does give us a chance after that to start recouping some income from the pilot. So I think I can support this.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
The reason why I suggested a 0% is because it has been a non-ratable for a number of years. 5 more years is not going to break the city. Yes, it is not for the lowest income of residents, but it is for the working class. And when I ran the numbers on the 37, the low, it was at 37.5. That means that person is making $18 an hour. And I'm not sure where you get that in Mount Pleasant in a lot of places. So I'm going to have to say that having it at a 0 gives them the opportunity also to be able to adjust those rents if needed. Our working class are, they're not always well served in our community, just as our low income class are. And I'd like to see us be able to, help all of our residents. And if this gives this opportunity for this place to upgrade and do, the renovations that it needs, and then be able to start paying taxes, become rateable in 5 years, I'm happy with that.
Commissioner Gillis?
I can guarantee you that in 5 years, they won't be coming back on the tax rolls to pay. For one thing, we can only get 10%. By law, we can only get 10%. So we'll never have this fully on the tax rolls and collecting. And to use the excuse, well, it's been off the tax rolls since the 1980s, so what's another 5 years? That's not really being diligent and fiduciary with taxpayer dollars to say, because a parcel has been off the tax rolls for 40 years, now that it's changing hands and can be taxed at the smallest amount at 10%. So our city coffers get $9,000, and we're using that as a reason to not collect $9,000, which you got to figure is very much less. I don't know the actual numbers, but thousands, could be tens of thousands of, I'm sure it's tens of thousands of dollars of taxes less. I don't think that's being fiduciary with taxpayer dollars. This isn't a low income subsidized housing. If this building needed rehab or updates, that should be negotiated with the purchase price. I am very dismayed that since I started city commission 5 years ago, the turn of the city commission's intentions is to give multiple tax breaks. Parcel B was the first one, and now we're doing one on Broomfield here. As developers see this, there will be more. I have never seen a tax entity or someone who had a pilot, unless it changed hands and was bought by a different person, give up a pilot. I guarantee you, Commissioner Perschbacher, when in 5 years, they will not be asking to pay us $9,000. That they're going to say, oh, that's okay. We've made enough money and we have a little bit of a nest egg. So I really don't think this is fair to the taxpayers of Mount Pleasant.
Commissioner Ronan.
Yeah, I think what moves me on this is the fact that it is the Housing Commission coming before us. I agree with Laurie, Commissioner Gillis, in terms of some of these. If it was a private developer, I don't think I'd be particularly supportive. So if there's developers listening, this isn't open the floodgate type thing, but it seems pretty focused, pretty targeted, but I'm certainly sensitive to the argument as well.
With no hands up, I will we'll have a roll call vote. And just to reiterate the motion on the floor, the motion is to have staff work with the city attorney to draft a pilot agreement or a private pilot ordinance for 0%.
Okay, Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
No.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
No.
Motion fails 3-3.
Yep. I want to make a motion that we actually go with option 3, which is a municipal services agreement for the equivalent of 5% of rents. Commissioner Elsager.
I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and it has been seconded. This allows us to sort of cut down the middle. We're going to, we would get revenue, and also it would avoid us seeing some of that $9,000 if we would did the 10% pilot, and that's just an estimation that we would not have to split this with other governmental entities. I also, I feel the Housing Commission does a great service in our community. They allow people to, get into housing that otherwise would not be. But this specific purchase seems centered around workforce housing, which is a different caliber. Some of those incomes and some of those rents that are being floated for this project specifically, to be quite frank, aren't very off from what I live in, and I think a lot of people are in our city live in. So I sort of understand both sides of the argument here. And so I think this is a way to cut down the middle, but I will open up the floor for discussion. Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
Willing to take the 5%. I still think that we should maybe give them a better deal, but I'm willing to do a 5% to move this along.
Commissioner Alsager? Barry, you're muted.
I think, Mayor, your motion is kind of a good middle ground, partly because it matches what Commissioner Gillis was interested in, the city receiving some income and still giving something of a benefit to the Housing Commission. So I will support this.
Well, without any more discussion, we'll go. Our attorney, Mike Homier.
So I just, I want to make sure that I'm clear about what happens after 5 years. So right now, option 3 says 0% pilot for 5 years, along with an MSA to pay an annual sum, the equivalent of 5% of rents. Are you suggesting after that 5-year period, there's no percentage of annual shelter rents? So let me start with the premise that property owned by the Housing Commission is exempt by law. So under that scenario, then you can charge shelter rents up to a maximum of 10%. If we're looking at a 0% pilot for 5 years, what happens after 5 years?
I guess my understanding of what's been presented to us is that after 5 years, it would come before the commission again to whether consider continuing that 0% pilot or not. And also, I guess, the municipal services agreement as well in this instance.
Okay, so as long as, that the annual shelter rent percentage is a function of the ordinance, which it would be, I think, a mischaracterization to call it an extension unless there's a renewal of, I suppose, the ordinance in 5 years. So it's not an application type of process. It is within the sole authority of the city commission to adopt an ordinance, or in that case, to re-adopt an ordinance.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, is that if we go with option 3 and we do the 0% pilot, that doesn't expire after 5 years?
It could be written in a manner, it could be written in a manner in which that that terminates. Now, part of that's going to be the separate MSA agreement, right? This municipal services agreement. And so I don't know how long you intend for that to last. If we're talking about the same 5 years, then within that, or at the end of that 5-year period, then the then city commission could draft another ordinance, amend the existing ordinance to provide for annual shelter rents in a percentage, or I suppose could consider an amendment or extension to the MSA. I just didn't know, I just want to make sure that if I'm drafting that what we're doing with it in 5 years.
Right. Okay.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Can I say something? Can I say something first? I had my hand up. Mike, is there some reason why we can't just say it sunsets and they pay 10% in 5 years? I mean, I don't know that we want to have it come before the commission again.
Yeah, so that's partly what I thought we were doing was that
I would assume too. Yeah. Right.
That after 5 years, we go from a 0 shelter rent and the MSA at 5% to either a combination of those two or annual shelter rents just at 10% under the ordinance.
And as a follow-up, I'd like that to be, since it hasn't been written yet, it would be good if that were written in so that the commission doesn't have to take any action, so that it happens automatically. And then if the owners want to extend it, they'd have to come before us. So that it's on them, not us, right? Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't know. George, I couldn't hear you that well. I don't know if your internet connection or if my connection is bad.
Can people hear me now? Yeah, I'd
Can
like
hear you
my
now.
idea. I think the idea is to sunset it so that at the end of 5 years, there's automatically a 10% that's charged. The 10% of the rent, it would automatically default to that. We don't have to do anything. It's up to the owners of the property to come before us and say, hey, we want an extension or we want something else. But it would automatically sunset to the 10%. I mean, that's reasonable. I'm not aware of anything that's ever been written otherwise. So, I mean, if that's not what we typically do, I'd certainly like to argue that it makes sense, right?
Okay. So I think, George, I think that sort of requires a motion, because I feel like that's a little bit outside of what the written option 3 is. And so if you want to make a motion to say that after 5 years, the pilot goes to 10%,
I don't think any of that's written, right? You're just in the process of writing up what this is going to be, right? So it's not like we have a motion before us. So when the motion becomes before us, we're just advising that it could have this component. I don't know that it requires a motion at this point, but if you
I
want to
think
vote on it.
Commissioner Ronan, I think it would be helpful to have a motion because you're right, we're not approving it tonight, but we are drafting something. So we would like to draft something that the majority of you appear to be in favor of based on what you know tonight. So I think I agree with the mayor. It would be helpful to have an amendment to the motion that would talk about what happens in year 6. And I'll take responsibility for that. I should have thought of that when I wrote out your options for you. I didn't look into year 6, so I think that's a great question to have. So if you want, it would be helpful to have an amendment to tell us what you want to have happen in year 6 as we draft something for you.
I make a motion that we modify option 3 to include, I don't know what the attorney will have to say what the official language is, but that we make it automatically reset to 10% of the rent at the end of 5 years, that we add that to it.
so that motion needs, the amendment to the motion needs a second. Commissioner Alsager, your hand is up.
I will second the motion.
Okay, so we have an amendment to set the pilot at 10% after 5 years, and that is the amendment that we can discuss currently. So for discussion, Commissioner Tolis, your hand is up, and I don't know if that means, if that's old or new.
No, that's new, Mayor. Question. So are we just waiving the first 5 years at 0? Or are we saying the first 5 years are 5%? And at the end of 5 years, it will go to 10%? Is that what I'm hearing?
That was what the motion was intended to be, Pete.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify it.
I think that's, we're just
Yeah,
modifying option 3 and adding that component. Right?
Okay, thank you.
But it's 5% of a service fee.
Right.
It's
So-
not across all taxing entities.
Right, but at the end of that, it goes to 10% of rent.
Oh boy.
It's not hard.
So I don't know, can you guys hear me? Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, we can hear you, Will.
Chris has his hand
Okay.
up.
Yep. So I just wanted to kind of answer Pete's question. I think the clarification is that the option or the motion that has been introduced is to have a 0% pilot for 5 years, but have a municipal services agreement at 5% of the rents for 5 years. And then the amendment, which we are discussing now, is to say after 5 years, that pilot would go from 0 to 10.
And the municipal
So I
service
hope that clarifies.
expire.
Yeah, I believe the municipal services agreement would expire after that. Or I know Chris Saladin had his hand up. I can't, my internet seems very slow right now, so I'm not sure if I'm.
Mr. Mayor, that was
up to
actually,
date with everybody.
that was Mary Ann Cornexel that had her hand up.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mary Ann.
That's okay. I put it back down. I just wanted to clarify what you were doing with the municipal service agreement, because I think there was some confusion whether it was a 5% pilot or a 5% municipal services. And I think you clarified that.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Chris.
Okay. I currently don't see any hands up. And so I'm just wondering if I'm seeing that correctly, actually.
There are no hands up, Mayor. You're correct.
Okay. So at this point, we can go to a roll call vote on the amendment, which is to set the pilot at 10% after 5 years.
Okay. Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. So now we are back to the original motion as amended.
There is no other.
Yeah, there is.
I'm confused.
Why would there be another? We just, this superseded the first motion. We just,
No, Commissioner Ronan, that was an amendment.
George, I think it's just,
Amendment to the motion. Now we have to vote on the first motion. First motion.
We made it official, George.
okay. I don't think you do, but we can do it if you want. Interesting.
So are we ready for the roll call vote on?
Just to be clear what everybody's voting on, you're voting on a motion now that would clarify that you want the staff to draft a 0% pilot for 5 years with a municipal service agreement of 5% of net revenues. And then in year 6, the pilot would go up to 10% and the municipal service agreement would go away. So you're voting on that entire package now.
So are we ready for a roll call vote? It looks like the mayor keeps freezing up on his screen.
I think so, Chris. My internet, I think I'm only hearing bits and pieces of people speaking, but I don't see any hands up on my screen, and so I think we can go to a vote.
Okay, Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
No.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
All right.
So just to clarify, Mayor, we will have that drafted for one of your upcoming meetings, and we will also attempt to answer a couple of the questions that came up this evening to get some additional detail on it. And we will work with the Housing Commission to make sure that they have updated pro formas to make sure that that works for them. So we will have all of that at your upcoming meeting to set the public hearing on. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. Next on our agenda is item number 12, which is to consider a contract amendment with Fleiss and Vanderbrink for additional engineering and surveying services related to the multi-jurisdictional stormwater master plan project. Manager Ridley, I'll let you introduce this topic.
Yes, this contract was awarded to Fleiss and Vanderbrink last summer based on an RFP that was issued and based on the data we thought we had available from all of the various jurisdictions on the stormwater system. As Fleiss and Vanderbrink has been working on this model and data over the last year, they've identified some additional data and surveys that would be extremely helpful in building the model, which will result in an increased reliability in the recommendations they are making about what type of improvements should be made to the storm drain system throughout the county. The proposal from Fleiss and Vanderbrink is to gather this additional data and do additional surveys, and the estimated cost for that work is $40,700, which our engineers have reviewed and they feel is reasonable for the amount of additional work that will be done under this expansion. The Drain Commissioner has committed to fund almost 1/2 of the increased cost because much of that data gathered will be from the county drains, and he agrees that it would be valuable to have that additional information. So he has agreed to cover approximately 1/2 of that additional cost. And I should note that the original contract that was approved last summer was fully funded by tribal 2% funds. In a typical year, we would have had engineering staff that might have been available to help complete some of the additional survey work that is being requested. But due to the turnover that we've experienced in our engineering tech positions, we currently don't have the staff capacity to help out with that. But we do have the savings from those vacancies in that department. So we're recommending that we use some of that staff vacancy savings to cover the other $20,000 of the increased cost for the contract. And Stacy Tuari is available on the phone. She's done much of this work on it. So she and Jason are available to answer any questions you might have. But our recommendation is to amend the contract for $40,600 and the appropriate budget amendments, recommending that the Drain Commissioner has committed to fund just over $20,000 of that extra cost.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I move to approve the contract amended with Fleiss and Vandenbrink for the $40,700 for the multi-jurisdictional stormwater study and appropriate budget amendment.
Commissioner Tolis.
So if I understand it right, the city is only paying $20,600 of the $40,700.
That's correct, Commissioner.
Can we add that to the motion? Can we amend that and put that in the motion?
So it says that we'll only be paying $20,600.
Correct, of the $40,700.
Okay, yeah, I will add that to the motion, that the cost would be $40,700, but the city's cost will only be $20,600.
I'll support that.
Okay. Chris, do you have all of that language?
Muted.
Yep.
Oh, sorry about that. My bad.
Okay.
So we have a motion to approve a contract with Fleiss and Vanderbrink, and that the city will pay 20,600 of the total 40,700.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion on this?
Mayor, if I may, just to clarify something, because the contract is between city and Fleiss, when you actually see us write checks for this, when the work is done, you will see the checks for the full amount, but the Isabella County Drain Commissioner will reimburse us. So the net cost to the city will only be 20,600. I just didn't want you to be surprised when you see the check registers come through.
Thank
Assuming
you.
this is approved, of course.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. I think the one thing to keep in mind about this project is that the original project was, I think it was $97,000 and some change, and we received a 2% grant for $100,000 to cover those costs. And so really, from what amounts to basically $140,000 project, the city's financial contribution has been, or will be, just over 20,000. And so seems like a pretty much no-brainer to me. And obviously a great, great opportunity and benefit to us and in our partnership with the Saginaw Indian Chippewa tribe. So I don't see any hands up, so I guess we'll move to a roll call vote on the agreement as presented.
Okay, Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next on our agenda is item number 17, which is to consider approval for resolution of the Mission Creek Dam easement to the Isabella County Drain Commissioner. And this has a lot of, this has a lot to it. And so I will hand it over to Manager Ridley to introduce this topic, although we did talk about this in a work session earlier this year, if you recall.
Yeah, and it's hard to remember back when we talked about it back in February. A lot has happened in our lives since then, but we did talk about it in work session. But to refresh your memory and so that the public knows, I would summarize our situation as follows. The Mount Pleasant Center land that the city owns has Mission Creek that flows through it into the east, into the city-owned Mission Creek Park. In the flood of 2017, there's a dam on the property at the Mount Pleasant Center property that was badly damaged during that flood. And the state indicated to us, since it's a state regulated dam, that we either needed to repair it or remove it. And the use of the dam was no longer necessary. And so we chose to go down the route of removing it. And we received partial funding for the project through tribal 2% funds. And the project was planned in this year's operating budget to have that work done. During the flood of 2017, it also showed that at some point the culvert under Crawford Road, which is within the city, may also need to be upsized because during that flood it was hit pretty hard, but it held up. So simultaneously, while all of that investigation was going on city property, the Isabella County Drain Commissioner was also looking at drainage improvements to the west of the Mount Pleasant Center property in Union Township. And in order for the project that he was designing to work, the drain under Bamber Road needed to be upsized. And there was the potential that more flow of water could be going through the Mount Pleasant Center to the east to Crawford Road. And we would have had to give approval for those improvements to be done since it flows through our property and it's not currently a drain easement that the Drain Commissioner has. So in conversations with the Drain Commissioner, the idea came up that if we granted an easement to the Mission Creek area through our property and through part of the parkland, that the Drain Commissioner could design the entire project and take care of the problem both in Union Township, our dam, and the Crawford Road all in one project. And it was much more cost efficient to do that. And the city would become one of the property owners that would be assessed our proportionate share for those improvements. So based on the estimates we received through the Drain Commissioner's engineer, it looked like the cost to the city that we would be assessed would be $385,000 for all of that work. And that would include our cost of removing the dam that he would do on our behalf. And so based on all of the reasons that are outlined in the memo to you from our city engineer, Stacy Tuare, as we worked through this with the Drain Commissioner, we have concluded that this is the best option for the city. And so we worked with the Drain Commissioner and his representatives to draft the resolution that would authorize the mayor to sign the 2 appropriate easements that would give the Drain Commissioner the easements and access to be able to do that work. And also the draft agreement for what we would be charged for the drain work. I should mention to you that as we were going through the packet today, it was pointed out that the legal documents that are attached to the resolution show that the drain easement would actually end just about 80 feet on the other side of Crawford Road. Our memos said that it would go all the way to the city limits, but it really doesn't need to go that far. It would just go about 80 feet into the park. And so we believe that the legal documents are adequate and would provide the appropriate things that the Drain Commissioner is looking for the appropriate flows. So we're recommending you go ahead and approve the resolution as drafted and presented in the commission packet, recognizing that the easement only takes it to about 80 feet east of Crawford Road and not all the way to the city limits. Assuming that you approve that this evening, we would then continue to have our discussions with the Drain Commissioner to make sure that really is adequate and that it doesn't need to go all the way to the city limits. And assuming that that is all true and the legal documents are correct, we would be good to go. But if during those conversations we find that there would be advantages to both the Drain Commissioner and the city to have that easement go all the way to the city limits, we would bring in an amended easement back to you for your consideration. But based on our initial thinking, we don't think that will be necessary. So we're recommending tonight that you approve the resolution as presented, which covers the 2 easements and the agreement. And as I indicated earlier, our city engineer is on the line with us tonight if you have any questions. And there's also a couple representatives from the Drain Commissioner's office with us if you have questions about the bigger drain project as well.
Vice Mayor Birschbacher.
That Commissioner Tolis had his hand up before me.
I think that was up from our last discussion, so I would just.
No, Commissioner
Sorry.
Tolis, okay.
Sorry about that. I have a comment, but I'm just going to wait till the motion's made to go to the comment period.
Okay, I just didn't want anybody to be out of
Okay.
line. Move to approve the resolution as presented, authorizing the mayor to sign the easements with the Isabella County Drain Commissioner for the Mission Creek Drain and supplemental agreement as presented.
Commissioner Elsager.
I will support that.
Okay. And for discussion, Commissioner Tolis.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm kind of hesitant on granting easements, 2 easements on a piece of property that we don't even have clear title to yet, as far as I'm concerned. And I have a problem with that. And I have a problem right now with spending any money, period, on this piece of property until we get clear title to this property. We're going to spend another $385,000. I don't think so. So I will not be supporting this.
I guess I would add that just to just for clarification, I think the city is under a requirement by the state right now to do something with the dam. And so I know that we've discussed earlier that there are some issues about, you know, what can we do there at the Mount Pleasant property. But regardless of those other discussions, this dam work has to be done. And so that money has to be spent regardless, in at least my estimation. So, Commissioner Gillis.
I know there is a charter provision that does not allow the city of Mount Pleasant or its commissioners to sell any land or lease any land like they did out to Indian Pines Park to an entity that is within 100 feet of the river or any of its tributaries. City Commission back in 2000 did a number and gave our 80-acre Indian Pines Park, leased it illegally, along with a total of about 300 acres, over 300 acres. So I know this charter provision is still intact. And being that we're talking about a tributary through the state-owned property and into our park system, are we violating that charter and not allowing a citywide vote like the city commission has done previously in previous years?
Commissioner Gillis, we did look into that, and City Attorney Homier said because we're not transferring the property, he indicated that an easement is allowable on that part of the land. And I don't know, Mike, if you want to jump in anymore, but we did have the city attorney look into that based on the wording of the easement and what we are granting to the drain commissioner.
Yeah, that's correct. And I was just trying to pull up that provision of the charter, so I will get that and comment further.
Thank you, Mike.
Commissioner Toles, is your hand is still up from your previous comment, correct?
No, I put it back up. I have another question, Mayor, for Mike. The quitclaim deed has a reverter clause in there with a year of 2021. So is it your opinion that technically we have possession of that property right now, or we don't have possession until 2021?
The city owns the property now, subject to a reverter.
Which is in effect until the year 2021, correct?
On certain conditions or triggering events, that's correct. Which those triggering events have not occurred, as to my knowledge.
From my reading of that quitclaim deed, that this wouldn't trigger that sort of event because this is not a sale of that property. This is an easement, which is
different. I would agree with that, and I would further say that this is a public use. This is not a private use. It is purely a public use.
I do have a separate question. in the agreement, there is some language about the city agrees to pay 30% of the project's cost related to downstream work. And in parentheses, it says supplemental benefit assessment. And in addition to its at-large public health benefit of 10% for the entire project. And I was wondering, how does that play into the money that we're paying for the dam and the other project improvements? Or is that more down the line in future?
Yeah, that applies to this. Jason or Stacy, can one of you answer that?
Stacy, I don't know if you can maybe jog my memory. One of those categories was for work that was on our property, and the other category was for the entire project. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think, Cole, are you still on the line? I think this might be a good one for you to jump in on.
Yes, I am here. Cole Hedrick, legal counsel on behalf of the Drain Commissioner's Office, and Pete Burstra is the engineer on the project, is also here. The 30% relates to the work that is being performed downstream of Bamber Road, including the Bamber Road crossing and the Crawford Road crossing. So that would include removal of that dam, which is why when you look at that agreement, it's going to say that they are going to remove the dam, replace the Bamber Road culvert, the Crawford Road culvert, and then there will also be additional work on the creek on that area. And that is the area that is not currently under the jurisdiction of the Drain Commissioner. So as it currently sits, that is a private water course, or in this case, it is water course under the city's jurisdiction. So what we were looking to do there is extend our jurisdiction to be able to include that as part of our project. The 10% relates to the entire project. That is the at-large apportionment for the entire project, and the 30% relates to that work downstream on the city parcels related to this project.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
So I just wanted to jump back in. The provision is Article 2, Section 16E and F of the city charter. Section 16E says the commission shall not have the power to sell, divide, lease, partition, plat, subdivide, or dispose of any city park or any part thereof unless specifically approved by a majority of the electors. We're not talking about park property, so that does not apply. The next section, subsection F, says the commission shall not have the power to sell, divide, lease, partition, plat, subdivide, or dispose of any city-owned interest in real property which lies within 100 feet of the edge of the Chippewa River or its tributaries as they may exist in their natural state, unless specifically approved by a majority of the electors voting thereon at any general or special election. This subsection shall not apply to the normal operation of a cemetery. So we looked at that provision within the context of granting an easement and determined that granting an easement does not constitute or does not come within the scope of that provision under the charter.
It looks like we lost, oh no, the mayor just moved down. I'm sorry, I thought we lost you, Will.
I did get, I think, kicked out for a second,
Oh.
but I got back in. So I didn't actually hear much of what Mike had to say. If you'd be willing to maybe give me a summary of what your opinion was?
Sure. We looked at the provisions of the city charter, which was Article 2, Section 16 E and F, and determined that granting an easement over this property did not violate any provisions of the charter.
Thank you, Mike. I see Commissioner Elsager's hand up.
Yes, it sounds to me like we're getting the benefit of some good other engineering type work from the Drain Commissioner's office. And I, as a potential future user perhaps of this property, I think I'm all in favor of this.
Commissioner Tolis, I see your hand is up.
That was from before, Mayor. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. George, did you have your hand up? Commissioner Rowan?
I apologize. I've sort of lost where we're at. Has someone made a motion to approve this and has it been seconded? Okay, I'm just, okay.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. I believe, was it Vice Mayor Perschbacher who made the motion? Okay. I don't see any hands up, and so we can go for a roll call vote on the motion in front of us.
Okay, Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
No.
Commissioner Elsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
No.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-2.
So next on our agenda is item number 18, which is consider a contract amendment with ID DOSCA for the 1 milligram reservoir bypass project. And Manager Ridley, would you like to start us off?
Sure. The commission approved a contract last year for necessary work on this bypass project. And it was done with the expectation that the work would occur this fall, and the supplies have been ordered to start the work. Recently, the Department of Environmental, Great Lakes and Energy, I think that's right, EGLE, did some additional reliability study work of our water system. And we also did some additional looking into some of our valve failures that we had in that area. And based on those two things, the engineer has recommended that we increase the scope of the project to address these new issues so that they can be done at the same time that the bypass project is done. So we're recommending an amendment to the contract for $126,440 for the additional work. And the funds for this would come from the water distribution reserve to be able to fund those things so that the whole project can be done at one time. So we recommend approval of that contract amendment.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
Recommend the city commission approve the contract amendment with LD DOSCA for the $126,440 of additional work on the 1 million reservoir bypass project.
Commissioner Ronan,
Second.
I don't see any hands up for discussion. So we can go straight to a roll call vote on the contract amendment.
Okay. Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on our agenda is item number 19, which is consider a closed session pursuant to subsection 8H of the Open Meetings Act to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by state or federal statute. Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
I support the going to a closed session.
Okay. Commissioner Gillis?
Second.
And we can go for a roll call vote. No
Okay.
discussion.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
and Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on our agenda is announcements on city-related issues and new business.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion before we get into these announcements potentially? Based on the time that it is, and based on the fact that you just voted to go ahead and have the closed session, I'm wondering if the commission might want to consider postponing your work session on the property maintenance ordinance based on the time of night that we're at, and the fact that we don't have a work session scheduled at the next meeting anyway. We could potentially move that to your next meeting. And so I wanted to throw that out before you got into announcements to see if the commission might want to make that decision to postpone that work session.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
I move that we postpone the work session till the next session so that we can go into closed session.
Commissioner Alsager?
I'll support that.
And the motion is to postpone our work session, correct? Chris, I don't see any hands up, so I guess we can go for a roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher. Oh, I didn't catch that. Amy said yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Officer Lobsiger, for keeping you on all night.
All right.
No worries.
We can go to announcements and city-related issues. New business. Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, I want to encourage the community to please fill out the census. It looks like we're getting up into the 70% response rate, which is great. would like to see a little bit higher. I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with the 90% chance. So please reach out to your neighbors and family and friends, not only within our community, but within the state of Michigan. With a 30-day shortening of our deadline and working on 2 censuses previously in my lifetime, it is very important that we just do this quick, less than 10-minute census to give us the monies that we need and the representation in Washington. So please do that for everyone. Also want to thank community members for putting on masks and doing your best at social distancing to keep us safe. Schools are back into session, and if we want to keep our schools up and running and maybe have a chance to see football games in person, the only way we're going to be able to do that is to keep our masks on. So please help us fight this battle. I also want to encourage everyone to reach out to the Parks and Rec commissioners or attend the master plan open house. I think that was on the 22nd of this month. Indian Pines Park is a park that we haven't had access prior to me becoming a city commissioner in 2016. I was able to get the north side open for community members and to use. Lots of letters in our packet this week are for comments on Indian Pines Park. It is a beautiful, pristine park. So if you know of it and have interest in preserving it and making it more accessible to community members, please either attend our master plan virtual meeting for Parks and Rec or reach out to any of us city commissioners or Parks and Rec commissioners, or send us an email. So all your help will help us in getting that open on both the north and south side. Also want just a shout out to staff. Last year I mentioned that cross lanes on the east side of town was wrong on the street signs. And now that I'm traveling that road once again, I see that it has been corrected and it's cross lanes with an S. So whoever is responsible for that down the line, Nancy, please let them know. I appreciate that. And it's just a thing of mine about being able to catch things that are misspelled. It's just a gift. So I appreciate you fixing that. And we will be talking about the blight ordinance, obviously, next commission meeting. So if anybody has any other comments or particulars, as a commissioner, even on my campaign trail before I became a commissioner, that was one of the things that community members were interested in. So I want to thank our staff for working on that and finally seeing that come down the pike. So appreciate that. And thank you.
Commissioner Toles?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Commissioner and comment on, thank Police Chief Loria and all the rest of the local law enforcement agencies on the control of the protest march on Thursday. I think it was handled excellent, no incidences, and thank you to all of you.
Mayor, if I may, I have just a couple comments under this section, if I could. The first one is to remind you and the public that we have a special meeting this Thursday, September 17th at 7 p.m. And that is a joint meeting with the City Commission, the Union Township Board, and the Mount Pleasant Public Schools to obtain the recommendations from the study committee that was put together to look at the Recreation Authority. And so that packet of information was distributed today, and that meeting will happen on Thursday. The schools are actually hosting the meeting, so it will be done virtually and it will be recorded, but it will not go live on our channel on Thursday, but it will be recorded for future viewing for any of the public who may want to see it at a different time. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other hands up. I just had a couple of brief things that really are just for another reminder for people to fill out their census. And I would also like to thank Chief Loria and our partner police officer organizations that were involved with the demonstration this past week. It was a great event and a testament to our community's ability to have tough conversations and to make our political beliefs well known, but also to work with each other and in a way that furthers the conversation. And obviously, I think we're doing a great job at that. And I'd just like to thank everyone that was involved. So. With that, we have our public comment on city-related issues. And if you're with us tonight, you can go to the raised hand feature, or you can press 9 on your cell phone. And Manager Ridley, did we have any email comments?
Just 1 second. I need to get to a different screen. No, we have not received any email comments, Mayor.
Okay. Without seeing any other hands up, I will close the public comment, and then we can recess, or I guess we don't have a work session anymore. So we do have our closed session, which will be, that's on another Zoom meeting. And so after our work session, we will adjourn the meeting. And so.
And just to clarify for the public, Mayor, we will not be taking any action after the closed session. So that's why we will adjourn from there. There will be no further action this evening for the public.
All right. Good night, everybody. And we'll see some of you in a closed session.
Are we going to have a 5-minute recess, or are we going directly to the closed session?
Take 5. Yeah. Take 5.
Hanging in there, Pete?
Oh, yeah.
You watch any football?
None.
Do you ever watch football or no?
Once in a while.
Yeah.
But it's been a while.
Yeah. I tell you, the Lions, they just, you know what I wonder? I just wonder if these organizations say, why can we not be successful? And
you got to adjust something there.
Yeah, I got to get you into the other meeting.
Okay.